Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I've noticed that recently, more and more people are traveling to China. As a Chinese person currently living in the United States, I wanted to walk you through a simple China travel checklist in this video. China is an amazing place to visit, but it is also very different from what most people are used to, especially when it comes to internet access, payments, and apps. So there are a few things you definitely need to consider setting up before you land. This video is meant to be a general guideline on what apps you need. I won't go too deep into how to set everything up. Alright, let's get into it. First thing, VPN. Most people already know this, but many of the apps and websites you use every day, like Google, Instagram, WhatsApp, or YouTube, they don't work normally inside China. So if you want to access to those services, you should install a VPN before you arrive. And this part is really important. Make sure you download and set it up before entering China, because some VPN websites may not even be accessible once you're already there. There are many VPN options out there. You can see I've listed a few on my screen, and I've personally used all of them. Here's something you should know. Most well-known Western VPN providers, they do not work reliably in China. For example, NordVPN and ExpressVPN are both very popular in the United States, and I personally use them here. But when I travel back to China, neither of them really works. They might connect occasionally, but most of the time, they are just blocked. One option that has worked pretty reliable for me is called Let's VPN. I've used it multiple times, and it works quite well in my experience. Now, full disclosure, this video is not sponsored. If you want to explore other options, it's totally fine. And just make sure do your own research and confirm that your VPN actually works in China, so you don't waste your money. There's also a subreddit called China Travel, which can be a helpful place to find updated information. Now, by the way, I've created a China Travel checklist PDF that you can download using the link below, and it's completely free. If you know any VPNs that work reliably in China, feel free to leave a comment. I can add them to the checklist to help others to prepare better. Now let's talk about another way to stay connected, eSIM cards. To be honest, I haven't personally used it myself. But last summer, when my girlfriend traveled to China, she used her Mint Mobile eSIM card and was able to access Instagram and YouTube without using a VPN. And a lot of my friends do the same thing. The reason this works is because eSIM providers often route your internet traffic outside of China, so you can bypass restrictions without needing a VPN. You may need to enable international roaming, and it may cost a little bit extra, but in my opinion, it's totally worth it. There are also definitely cheaper options out there as well. So again, do your own research and pick whatever works best for you. My suggestions, if possible, get both a VPN and an eSIM card before your trip. It will also save you the trouble of buying a local SIM card and gives you a backup option. So why not? And if you know any good eSIM providers, feel free to leave a comment so I can add them to the checklist. Okay, next, payments. Now I remember 10 years ago, around 2015, people in China were still using cash pretty often. But nowadays, almost nobody uses cash anymore. There are two apps that dominate everything, WeChat and Alipay. You can use them to pay for restaurants, taxis, coffee shops, convenience stores, and pretty much everywhere. So before your trip, it's a good idea to download these apps and try to set up your payments methods. Now, just a heads up, Chinese apps have their own way of doing things. You might run into some issues or frustrations when setting everything up. And honestly, even as a Chinese person myself, I still find parts of the process confusing sometimes. And these apps definitely need more improvement when it comes to international users. For now, I'd recommend checking Reddit to see how other travelers set up their payments. That can save you a lot of time. But once everything is set up correctly, it becomes extremely convenient. And to be fair, policies are changing pretty quickly, so I wouldn't be surprised if things get much easier for international travelers in the near future. Now let's talk about transportation. For ride-hailing, the most commonly used app is called DiDi, which is basically the Chinese version of Uber. It's widely used and works in most cities. The English support is actually not too bad in my opinion. And quick heads up, If someone approaches you in person and offers you a ride, do not go with them. You will often see this at train stations or maybe some airports. These are usually not licensed taxi drivers, and their pricing is not regulated. Some of them are fine, but others may overcharge you significantly. So, to stay safe and avoid unnecessary hassle, just stick with DiDi whenever possible. For trains, flights, and hotels, a very useful platform is called Trip.com. It's actually a Chinese company, but the app and website are fully available in English and very foreigner-friendly. It's similar to Expedia in the US or Booking.com in Europe. Also, quick tip. In China, traveling by high-speed train is often more convenient and cheaper than flying, especially for medium-distance trips. So definitely consider taking the train instead of flying when you can. Now, here's something interesting. You don't always need to download separate apps. If you use WeChat, you can actually access services like DiDi and Trip.com directly inside the app. Just follow the steps shown on my screen. Go to your profile, go to your services, and at the bottom, you will see a transportation section where you can find DiDi and Trip.com. And yes, you can do similar things inside Alipay as well. Here's an example of booking train tickets on Trip.com, and it should be pretty straightforward. You select your departure station, arrival station, and the travel date. One important tip: make sure you select high-speed trains only. Otherwise, you will see a mix of high-speed train and slower trains. The easiest way to identify a high-speed train is by the train number. If it starts with G, it's a high-speed train. China's high-speed railway system is incredibly developed and very convenient. And in many cases, it's actually faster than flying, especially between major cities. Next, translation tools. Many young people in major Chinese cities do speak some English, but overall, English is still not as widely used as it is in Western countries. So having a translation app is going to be extremely helpful. If you are using Google Translate, make sure to download the offline language pack before your trip. Because Google services are blocked in China, having an offline translation ensures that you can still use it without internet access. Now finally, let's talk about food. One of the most popular lifestyle apps in China is called Meituan, and you can use it to order food delivery, coffee, groceries, and even book restaurants. And yes, you can literally order your McDonald's or KFC straight to your hotel. This app is a huge part of daily life in China. Now, you may be wondering about delivery costs, right? I currently live in the US, and apps like DoorDash or Uber Eats can be pretty expensive. But in China, delivery is extremely cheap, often just a fraction of the cost. So I highly recommend trying it if you can. So that's the China travel checklist. If you set up these apps before your trip, you'll save yourself a lot of time and confusion once you arrive. China can feel very different at first. Once you have the tools ready, getting around becomes surprisingly easy. As I mentioned earlier, I've made this checklist available as a downloadable PDF, so you can keep it on your phone while traveling. If you find this helpful, feel free to subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.